Most .NET developers eventually hit the same problem. You have an API, a user does something, and suddenly your app needs to send emails, generate PDFs, call third-party APIs, update databases, and now your request takes 10 seconds. Or worse, time's out. So what do most developers do? They throw in a background worker or a cron job or a queue table in SQL. But there's a much better pattern. Today I'm going to show you how to use RabbitMQ with C# to build proper message-driven systems. By the end of the video, you'll understand what RabbitMQ actually does, how to publish messages from a .NET app, and how to consume them with a worker service. And once you see this pattern, you'll realize how many systems should actually be using it. So first of all, let's talk about what RabbitMQ actually is. RabbitMQ is a message broker. So think of it like a post office for your applications. Instead of one service calling another directly, service A sends a message to RabbitMQ, and then RabbitMQ stores it safely. Then service B picks it up whenever it's ready. This gives you some huge benefits. First, decoupling. Your API doesn't need to know if the email service is online. Second, reliability. RabbitMQ stores messages until they're processed. And third, scalability. If you suddenly need to send 10,000 emails, you just add more workers. The easiest way to run RabbitMQ locally is with Docker. So let's get Docker installed locally and we can take a look. So first of all, I'm going to call Docker and we're going to do a run. Then we need a switch for D. We're going to set the host name to Rabbit, set the name to RabbitMQ, do a switch P for port, and that will be the standard port, which is 5672. And then RabbitMQ also has a management interface, which will listen 15672. And the image is RabbitMQ 3-management. So we execute that, and this is essentially saying run this image, set the running container host name to Rabbit and the name of the container to RabbitMQ, and give it these particular ports, and this is the image that we want to run, which is the Rabbit 3 management. So the application itself would be running on 5672, and the management interface, this web interface that comes with the container, will be running on 15672. So just to test that out, I'm going to bring over a browser, and we're going to go over to localhost 15672. And there we go. We have a login screen. And for this image, by default, the username is guest and the password is guest. Obviously, you're going to want to change that. And also, I'm going to need to be able to type the word guest correctly. There we go. So this is the RabbitMQ web interface. So nice and simple, just by using Docker to pull down an image and configure it in a certain way, we have RabbitMQ running on this local Windows machine. Even easier if you're using something like Linux, and it tends to be a little bit more Linux friendly, although to be fair, it's running very easily on Windows in my experience. And this is where we can start to see some of the elements of RabbitMQ. So we've got connections. So obviously there's 0 connections to this RabbitMQ instance at the moment. We've got 0 channels, but we'll get into channels in a second. And we've got 0 queues as well. So queues will be where we can store these jobs. And as soon as we need to do something with them, we can pull them or consume them and do something with them. So the next thing we want to do is create a publisher. So this is going to be something that will actually publish messages to RabbitMQ so that they can be consumed. So I've created a simple console application. We've called it RabbitMQ intro. If I just head over to the terminal here, we can add a NuGet package. So I'll just go over to the location where the project is stored, the CS proj, and we can type .NET add package RabbitMQ.client. Now, I already have this installed on this app, but it will pull the latest one down and we'll have everything we need to be able to interface with this RabbitMQ instance. So making sure that we've got a reference to RabbitMQ.client at the top, the first thing we're going to do is write some code to connect to RabbitMQ. So first of all, we'll create a factory. That's how we're going to initiate this connection. So I'll create a variable called factory, and that's a new instance of connection factory. That will expect a host name. And we're going to put in localhost because that's where our RabbitMQ instance is running. Then we can use a using statement to create a connection, grabbing the connection from that factory. So we can say await factory.create connection async. So this is where we get into channels. So before we go and create a queue to send to, we want to create a channel for that queue to live inside. So again, we can say using, and we're going to create a variable called channel, and that's where we can use that connection that we've just created with the factory to create a channel. And then to create a queue on this channel, we can simply say await channel.queue declare async, and If I just press tab on that one, we can see this is everything we want to have on here. It's called invoice jobs. That's the name of the queue. I can change that to whatever it needs to be. I think invoice jobs is fine for this demo. And then we've got some other properties here that we can set. So durable, this will declare whether the queue should survive a restart. So if RabbitMQ was to restart at the moment, because this is set to false, that queue would also disappear. If we left it to true and we made it durable, that queue would survive the restart. We have an exclusive property. So if we set this to true, then it will be limited to the connection that declared the queue. So the connection will be coming from this code. This is the code that declared the queue, therefore only this connection would be able to use it. I'm going to set that to false because in most cases you're going to want to have multiple connections being able to access this queue. So then you also have an auto delete property. Now this is set to true. I'm going to set this to false because I don't necessarily want the queue to disappear when the last consumer unsubscribes from the queue. So let's say, for example, you have a queue and 10 subscribers. One by one, they start to unsubscribe. And once they've all gone, with auto delete, the queue would be destroyed. And in this example, we're not going to explore that, but actually, I wouldn't want that to happen. I'd want the queue to stick around just in case some other consumers need to subscribe to it. So now we're ready to create a message and to publish it to this RabbitMQ queue. So to create a message, it's very simple. It's just going to be a string. And in this example, I'm going to say generate new invoice for, or actually I'll say with ID and then 2468. So in this scenario, you could have the queue acting as a trigger for something else to happen. It could be that another consumer is going to pull this message down. It's going to see that its instruction is to generate a new invoice with this specific ID. So a nice and simple string. So then we need to create a body for the message. Now the message string isn't the body. The body is the object that holds that string message. The reason we do it this way is because the body can hold that message as bytes. The good thing is then it doesn't matter what is inside the body because it can be reconstituted into whatever it needs to be on the other side. So we'll put a new variable, var body, and we'll, for this, create a series of bytes, so a byte array. So we're using encoding UTF-8 dot and then get bytes, passing in our message. So that now has created a byte array that we can use as a body. This is essentially the data that's going to get passed in to RabbitMQ. And now we can actually publish this to the channel. So we can say channel, which is the instance of the channel that we created, dot, and then basic publish. And it's actually basic publish async. So I'm going to await that. And I'm going to create some explicit properties here. So we can specify the exchange. I'm going to set that to blank. Then we specify a routing key. So the routing key in this scenario is the name of the queue that we're publishing to. So that will be the same as this. Then we can set some message properties with the property basic properties. Now we don't want to actually set anything else on this. We want to keep it nice and simple. And then finally, we add the body of the message. And then we also set another property, which is mandatory. And we're going to set that to true. And what this means is that if we set this to true, which we have, the message must be routed to a queue, which is exactly what we want to do because we've said that our routing key is invoice jobs. And it's still complaining because there's actually a mistake that I've made here. Even though we're not setting any basic properties, we can't set it to null, so we just have to set it to an instance of basic properties. There we go. So here we're saying that we're establishing a routing key with the string invoice jobs. We've said that it's mandatory that it gets routed to a queue, so it's going to use that key to find the queue invoice jobs, and it's going to pass this body, which is a byte array. And then I'll just put a console.writeLine, and that will just confirm that the message was sent. So let's just put a breakpoint on here, and then I'm going to run this console app, and we'll step through and watch it work. So we've established a connection. If we take a look at that, we can see is open equals true. We've got our endpoint, which is the local host endpoint. We create our channel, we create our queue, and then we just generate our message, converting it to bytes. And then we publish it, and there we go, message sent. And if we go over to the management portal, we can see that there is a new queue. We go over to invoice jobs, and you can see over here, there is one message that has been received. Now, if we wanted to, we could get the message from here to see what it was. So actually, in the interface, we could say, grab a message from the queue, and we can read it. There's a few options here that we need to set. So with RabbitMQ, you have an ACK, or an acknowledgement, and here we can set what kind of acknowledgement to send. We could automatically acknowledge the message. That sends the ACK and then takes the message out. We can also reject the message and then requeue it, or we could reject the message and not requeue it. So just by default, we'll use this enac message requeue true, so keep the message in the queue. The encoding that we can choose is either automatically a string or base64. So if I click get message, you can see we have the payload for the message, and that's the string that we added into RabbitMQ from that publisher code. And as you can see, there's still a message in there. If I then change this ACK mode to automatic ACK and say get message, we see the payload, and I've just refreshed the page and we can see there are no more messages in the queue. So that one message that was there, we sent the acknowledgement, which removed it from the queue. And it really is as simple as that. Now, there are a lot of more complicated features for RabbitMQ, but on a very basic level, if you just need to be able to establish a queue quickly, this is absolutely the way to go. You can see from here as well, we can also publish a message. So we can give it some headers. So I could say is invoice and then set it to true. I could change the data type. So I could change that to a Boolean if I wanted to. And then I could type some data into there and publish the message. That's been published. And you can see if I refresh it, and then we have a message in the queue there. So then I can go and dequeue it, and there we go. You could also go ahead and add queues from here as well. So you could actually type the name of another queue. So second queue, you can say whether it's durable or transient. So durable being it'll stick around if the broker, so RabbitMQ, is restarted. You can set whether it auto expires, what the max length of any data is. Dead letter routing, so you can say if it becomes a dead letter, you can route it to another routing key. Dead letters is probably a bit out of scope for this video, but we could go into it in another video. But if I add that queue, you can see very simple, added it into the same RabbitMQ instance. This has got a D for durable. So I love all this stuff. I think it's just so cool that you can get this up and running so quickly, and you have a very robust and reliable and scalable queue, essentially queuing system. And a message bus like this is so integral to cloud systems because it takes away all the kind of plumbing and the busy work that you would have to take on if you were using something like an in-memory queue or if you were using a database. Not to say that RabbitMQ is the answer to everything, but it's a very convenient way, especially in .NET, to establish distributed systems that are linked with messages that sit in these queues. So another thing we can do in the code is once we've actually used a publisher, so we've created a queue and then published a message to the queue, we can also then create a consumer. So they wouldn't necessarily be in the same code block, there'd be a consumer in another service, but just for convenience, I'll add one here. So I'll create a variable called consumer, and the consumer object that we want is an async eventing basic consumer, and that will expect an I channel or a channel. So we can use the one that we already created, and there is our consumer, nice and simple. Now, because this is an eventing basic consumer, it's event based, so we're going to create an event listener. So we'll say consumer and then go to its received async event, and we'll add a listener for that. So the arguments will be, we'll just call it a model, and then we'll put X, and then we'll do a lambda expression there. And in fact, because that's event args, I'll just put that as args, so it's a bit simpler to read. And so now we can create a body for the message, but we can do it the other way around. So instead of creating a string and then getting the bytes, we can receive bytes and convert it to a string. So we can say var body equals, and then we'll do args dot, and this will be the message object that we sent in. So we can access the body, and we're going to put that into an array. So we get a byte array. There we go. And then we can turn that into a message by saying encoding dot utf8 dot get string instead of get bytes, and then body. And also, in the event, we can console.writeline that out, so we can just say message. And because this is async, it's returning a task, so we can say turn task.completed task. So we've set up the event listener that describes what happens when the received async event is fired, and then we can actually force a consume so that that event does get fired. So we can say channel.basic consume async. In fact, we should be able to do an await on that, and then we'll set our properties. So we want to say which queue we want to consume from, so that will be invoice jobs. Just as we did in the portal, we can say whether we're going to do an auto ACK, and in this case, I'm going to say yes. That will send an acknowledgement to RabbitMQ. And then the consumer that we're going to give it to is the consumer that we've just created. So by doing that, it will pass it to this consumer, and then this received async event will fire. So if I put a breakpoint here, I'm going to take away this breakpoint so that when we run it, we simply see that the connection is established, the queue is created, the message is sent, the consumer is then created with the event set up. We then actually consume from the channel on that queue, and then we should see the breakpoint hit on this received async event. And there we go. So in that space of time, that was all sent up. We've got the args here. So if I just look at these, and we can see the routing key is invoice jobs. We've got the body here. And at the moment, the body is just a section of read-only memory. So it's a byte array. We're going to then reconstitute here into a string. And there we go. It's that nonsense that we sent through. So that was the next available message. And then after that, we had another message, which was generate new invoice with ID 2468, which was the one that was created further up. So actually, you've just seen that when there was a message already in the queue, that message was older than the one we've just created. So it was actually consumed first. And that should be the end of our console app. And then we would expect to see in the queues that there are no messages left. So everything's been pulled from invoice jobs. Everything's been or acknowledged, and there we go, nice and clean. So by demonstrating RabbitMQ in this very simple video, we've talked about some important concepts. We've talked about durable queues, so these are queues that can survive a restart. We've talked about acknowledgements, where the workers are going to confirm the messages have been processed. So you can probably tell that I quite like RabbitMQ, but when do you actually want to use it? Well, you probably want to use a message broker when the work you're doing takes longer than a request cycle, or in situations where tasks can run asynchronously and the work you want to run needs to retry, it needs to be reliable, or if you have multiple workers processing the jobs. So in other words, almost every automation system eventually needs this kind of pattern. When it eventually scales out to the cloud or into a distributed system, it's going to need this kind of pattern. So if you have found this interesting and you want a follow-up video, I can show you how to build a proper background processing architecture in .NET using RabbitMQ, worker services, retry policies, and as I briefly hinted at earlier, dead letter queues. And all of those things put together is basically how modern distributed systems actually run. So if you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments. And if you're a .NET developer building automation systems, subscribe for more deep dives just like this.